Welcome to the AdTech Forum.
Being a major election year, we're breaking this video into 3 sections: the political landscape, the challenges and complexities, and how to prepare for upcoming elections. We're excited to welcome Shannon Chatlos to talk about all things political advertising. Shannon is a partner at SPM, where she leads the digital and strategic media team. She's responsible for developing messaging strategies, advertising solutions, and integrated digital strategies for candidates, associations, advocacy clients, and corporation. Shannon, welcome to the AdTech Forum.
Thanks for having me, you guys.
We are excited to have you here. This is a very hot topic in an election year, and so we think that this is going to be very informative to everybody that's listening. So what trends from where you are sitting today are you noticing as it relates to political ads? And what are those particular trends changing in comparison to how they were during the last election season?
I think the biggest trend that I'm seeing is that we aren't segmenting out digital into its little own room or its own little bucket. And we're really approaching our ad buys holistically and really thinking about where can we reach our voters and developing a media plan that's very integrated. I think that the fragmentation of the media markets has caused that. Like we had to, but we have to look at our budget as a whole. And in cycles past, in political cycles past, I think you would have digital consultants fighting with traditional linear consultants over budget. And, you know, at our firm, we took a big step back a long time ago. So we were in a really good place to make that change. But I think the biggest trend is, are your buyers looking at the buy holistically and not just, you know, digital versus linear and direct mail and all that kind of stuff. So we're really looking at the whole buy and how can we reach our voters?
I'd love to hear from your perspective, like what's changed in regards to some of the platforms or technologies that campaigns are using and how those are effectively being done.
I mean, streaming and CTV, OTT has really changed the landscape for us because we can target the ads. You know, obviously we are reaching a very specific person. Probabilistic matches don't really help voter-driven campaigns. We're not trying to find someone that looks like somebody else. We're trying to find that very specific voter. So I think the onboarding of and the ability to target with streaming and get that large glass experience, just like our broadcast, really burn in a message like we would on a broadcast buy, has really been a huge advantage to us. And it's something we're definitely taking advantage of. How
do you feel that data analytics is changing as it relates to political ads? And do you happen to have any examples of how that data-driven decisions are being done or how they're affecting campaigns and messages, mostly as it relates to, you know, targeting your potential voters?
Yeah, I think unless you've been on a campaign where you really realize like how much goes into audience development, it's pretty much the backbone of everything. So in many ways, it's just a giant math problem. How many people do we need to move? How expensive is the media market? How many people are in the target audience? What kind of, are we talking about a statewide? Are we talking about a congressional district? Are we talking about something more local? So when it comes to data analytics, like our data is voter data. So sometimes I think that we tend to overanalyze that, like it's voters. So with the data analytics, I think if you're talking about are the reporting platforms allowing us to see, maybe we are using data analytics to see how much our linear reaches and where can we incrementally help through a digital buy. But I think when you're talking, at least when you're talking to me and we're talking about data, like for me, it's hard data, it's voter data.
And that hard data. So with that, so you have hard data, you have the voter data. That leads us to the next component of this series, of this specific episode, of complexities and challenges within the political advertising ecosystem. As part of this section, I want to be able to dig in with you on misinformation and disinformation. Okay. So from where you're sitting specifically, how do political agencies handle the spread of misinformation and disinformation across multiple digital platforms?
I feel like I should bring the comms team in on this question. This isn't just about advertising, right? So let me take a step back and say how incredibly frustrating it is that because of like a really bad PR move on the platforms, that I now have to get personally certified with my driver's license, my social security number, like where I live, my home address, to buy political advertising on certain platforms. To me, that's data privacy issue right there. So I don't think that digital platforms are the reason for the spread of disinformation or misinformation. I think the news is. I think that we've gotten incredibly partisan. And I think that news programming is probably more likely to be the culprit of spreading misinformation than digital platforms. I was talking to Eric Wilson earlier today, actually. He's a good friend. And he's like, hey, oh my gosh, I just tweeted about this, that it was like 0.15% of content on digital platforms would be considered fake news. But that's very small.
0.15. Wow.
0.15.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
To be clear,
it would be
0.15.
considered fake news. And you also have to remember that political campaigns sling mud. This is not anything new. This is, now listen, we have to provide substantiation for the claims that we make. So,
and what strategies do you proceed with to be able to substantiate the variances or the differences, or be able to just back that up?
Well, to my point, we can use news. Listen, I happen to be in a situation where I haven't never had a client ask me to create an ad or put something out that was blatantly false. So I know that that's not the case for some advertisers. And, SPM, our firm does a lot of tons of content creation. We just haven't been put in that situation that it's that blatant. So this isn't an area where that's a super challenge for me.
Okay. That's great. Let's pivot to the next question. When it comes to ad targeting and just voter privacy, you even explained firsthand, Shannon, how you have to give your social security number. What are the ethical and privacy considerations when using targeted digital ads in political campaigns?
One thing that I think is really important especially for a lot of your constituency that's listening to this, our privacy concerns aren't as heightened as some others because we're not using this for commercial purposes. So most of the privacy laws and restrictions are around commercial use of data. And we are using data that is publicly available as most of our targeting. So I'm using publicly available voter data, which, by the way, it's always funny that I think we spend a lot of time creating privacy laws, but I can still walk up to someone's door and door knock for political purposes, no matter what the no solicitation sign says at the front of the neighborhood. And you can send as much direct mail as you want. You can, like when you become a voter, know that, the reason that, well, at least I think maybe North Dakota or South Dakota has no voter registration. You just show up and vote. But for the most part, voter rolls and voter registration data is public information. So we're using that data one-to-one. So we're either putting it up into one of the, aggregators like a Simcasting or a LiveRamp, or we're uploading the data directly, such as Facebook and the programmatic platforms that we like to use. So we're using it so specifically, and we're modeling it to and using it directly. So
you answered the question. That makes sense. How you're approaching it.
Yeah. And what I would also say is that it's part of democracy. Like if you want voters to be informed, you need to have it remains such that this is public information.
I absolutely love how you just touched on democracy. So hitting on the third portion of what we're going to be talking about, obviously, as the three of us know, and everyone watching and or listening, we have many upcoming elections this year. This is a big, big year. And we appreciate you taking the time out of your incredibly busy day, Shannon, to talk with us about this. So as we are preparing in America and just others that are watching overseas and in their respective elections, but most specifically for the US, help us understand, what role does AI play in the development and deployment of political ads? Is AI a friend or is AI a foe?
So I was actually at an AdTech Forum.
Not the AdTech Forum.
Not the AdTech Forum, AdTech. It was a conference, right?
Yep. I know which
And
one you're
one
talking
of
about. Yep.
the very smart, this isn't this year, this is a couple of years ago, but AI was just kind of being something that people were really, really starting to talk about. A gentleman said something that really stuck with me, and that is that AI should be used as a force multiplier for human intelligence. And for us in political, I think that is how it's used best. The AAPC has come out against, which is our American Association of Political Consultants. It is completely unethical and against our code of ethics to use deep fake AI generation for anything. And by the way, that's just inviting like a very bad news story for your candidate, right? Like if you're using fake stuff and you're creating things that aren't real, I mean, the whole point of a candidate is to convince voters that your authentic self is worth the vote. So, right? I
Yes.
mean, so the use
Yes.
of AI that isn't real and creative is not authentic. However, when how I use AI is to make my team smarter and faster. So if we're trying to come up with contextual keywords to buy against, then I can, upload a video or our entire website and say like, help me be faster, or Google search terms and things like that. So we definitely are using AI to help us, take a candidate's speech and create social media posts from the speech. So those are the kinds of things that we're using AI for. But again, like we're using it we wrote the speech. Now we're, the candidate wrote the speech. Now we're, creating social media bites out of it. So that's how we're using AI here at our firm.
I respect it. Thank you. That's super helpful.
Yeah.
As we prepare for the upcoming election, what are the biggest challenges, just as a professional that's been doing this for a couple of decades, that has a lot of experience with political advertising and just everything within this ecosystem? What do you foresee as the biggest challenges and or opportunities for this election?
So there's two sections to this that I would focus on. So first is the challenge that I so much appreciate folks reaching out to us with their ideas from the ad tech industry as a whole. But if you have no experience with campaigns or you haven't volunteered on a campaign, what you think might work in Michigan doesn't necessarily apply to Georgia. Like you have to remember this is a very personal business where we are convincing someone that they should vote for a certain ideological value or personal brand or whatever we're doing. So I feel like you really do need to understand the nuances of politics. As far as my own, like, what are my challenges when I'm placing media, when I'm buying media? It's 100% fragmentation and budget. So it is really, really hard we can't buy everywhere, but people's own behaviors, like I'm watching media everywhere. I'm all over the place, right? I'm watching Hulu live broadcast and then I'm streaming something while I'm on my phone on Facebook or Instagram. I mean, so we know that voters are human beings, citizens of America are all over the place. And the budget's only, it's only so much.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for tuning in to the first of 2 episodes focused on political advertising. The second episode will be focused on healthcare. Thanks again to our sponsors, IQM, and thank you, Shannon, for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.